As the message continued to blare, Sophia's mind raced. Who were these invaders? Why were they attacking? And most importantly, what could she do about it? The thought of giving up never crossed her mind. She wasn't going to stand by and let her home be destroyed. She had to fight. The people around her were fighting, and they were going to need a leader, someone who could rally them, someone who wouldn't back down. But as she looked around, she saw fear in every face. People were lost, confused, and hopeless. The world they had known was falling apart, and nothing seemed real anymore. Was this the end of humanity? Would Earth ever recover from this attack? Sophia clenched her fists, the determination building inside her. She wasn't going to let this be the end. No matter how powerful these invaders were, humanity was not going to surrender. She would not stand idly by. The world needed hope. It needed a fight. And she was going to give it to them. With one last look at the destruction around her, she turned and ran. There had to be someone who could help, someone who could lead. The invasion wasn't over yet. Earth wasn't finished, and Sophia wasn't going to let it be. In the distance, she saw movement, a group of survivors, armed and ready to fight. They, too, had felt the terror of the attack, but they had not given up. They had survived, and they would keep fighting. Sophia joined them, ready to take on whatever came next. The fight for Earth was just beginning. The invaders had attacked, but humanity had a fire that would not be extinguished. The fury had been unleashed, and there was no turning back. The world was in chaos. After the unexpected attack, humanity had been thrust into a nightmare, but the fire of resistance was slowly igniting across the planet. Sophia stood amidst the smoldering ruins of her city, the air thick with smoke and the distant sounds of destruction echoing in her ears. She had made it out alive, but many others hadn't. And now, the real fight was about to begin. The initial shock had subsided, and in its place was a cold determination. The alien invaders, with their dark ships and relentless weapons, had come to Earth expecting an easy conquest. They had been so sure of their superiority, so confident that humanity would fall in line. They never expected this, the fierce defiance of the people they had tried to crush. Sophia had joined a small group of survivors, people who, like her, refused to accept defeat. They were not soldiers. They were doctors, teachers, engineers, and parents. Ordinary people who had found themselves thrust into extraordinary circumstances. But together, they shared one common goal: to protect what was left of their world. They had taken shelter in an underground bunker, a hidden base beneath the city's ruins. There, a makeshift command center had been set up, with scattered maps and hastily drawn plans covering the walls. The survivors were working day and night, trying to regroup and figure out how to strike back against the invaders. Sophia looked around at the faces in the room. Some were filled with fear, but most were burning with something else, a resolve to fight. There was no question anymore. The aliens had attacked Earth, and now humanity was going to respond. Sophia's mind raced as she tried to come up with a plan. They were outnumbered. The enemy's ships had wiped out entire cities in mere hours. But they were not invincible. They had underestimated Earth's will to survive. It was their arrogance that would be their undoing. The thought of their cold, emotionless voice echoing in her mind, "You are now under our rule," was enough to make her blood boil. She could still hear it clearly, the chilling sound that made her feel so small, so helpless. But she wasn't helpless. Not anymore. She turned to the group, her voice steady but full of emotion. "We can't wait for help to come. We have to take the fight to them. They've attacked our homes, our families, our way of life. We won't just sit here and wait to be wiped out. We have to show them what happens when you mess with humanity." A murmur of agreement swept through the room. Sophia could see the spark of hope in their eyes. The terror was still there, buried deep, but it was no longer the dominant force. They had a purpose now. They had something to fight for. One of the engineers, a man named Jason, stepped forward. His hands were covered in grease, but his eyes were sharp. "We've been working on a way to strike back, but it's going to be difficult. Their ships are powerful, and they have a defense grid around their main fleet. We can't just charge in and hope for the best." Sophia nodded, listening intently. "Then we need to find a way to break through their defenses. We don't have time for hesitation." Jason wiped his forehead, his face grim. "We've found something. A weakness, maybe. They're relying on a network of satellites that control their weapon systems. If we can hack into their satellite network and disable it, we might be able to level the playing field. But that means we need to get to one of their major hubs." The others fell silent, considering the risk. The idea was dangerous, but it was their best shot. Sophia could see the determination in their eyes. It was clear they were ready to risk everything. "If we can take down their network, we can strike at their fleet. They'll be vulnerable. And if we can do that, we can win," she said, her voice full of conviction. Jason looked at the map, tracing a line with his finger. "The closest hub is in what used to be China. It's a heavily guarded area, and getting there won't be easy. But it's our best option." Sophia glanced at the faces of the group. They were all afraid, but there was a spark in them. They were ready. "We'll do it," she said firmly. "We'll take the fight to them. We'll hit them where it hurts." The group began to prepare. Weapons were gathered, plans were finalized, and strategies were discussed. Everyone knew the risks, but they also knew they had no other choice. Earth had been attacked, and now it was time for humanity to strike back. As the group moved out of the bunker and into the ravaged streets, the weight of their mission pressed heavily on them. The sky was still filled with smoke from the alien ships overhead, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. But despite the fear that lingered in their hearts, they were no longer just survivors. They were fighters. The journey to the satellite hub was long and perilous. Along the way, they encountered pockets of resistance, other groups of survivors who had also decided to fight back. Some were armed, some were not, but all were determined to resist. The world may have been on the brink of destruction, but the human spirit was far from broken. As they neared their destination, the group paused for a moment of rest. They sat in the shadows of what had once been a thriving city, now reduced to rubble. Sophia looked around at the people who had joined her in this fight. They had come together in the face of terror, and together they were going to change the tide of this war. "We can do this," she said quietly. "We have to." The others nodded, their faces set with resolve. They knew the stakes, and they knew the cost of failure, but there was no turning back now. They had a mission, and they would not fail. As they moved forward, the sounds of distant alien ships grew louder. But this time, the sound didn't fill Sophia with fear. It filled her with determination. They had been attacked, but they would not be defeated. The fight was only just beginning. In the distance, the towering silhouette of the alien satellite hub loomed. It was heavily guarded, but they had no choice. They had to take it down. Earth's future depended on it. The fury of humanity had been unleashed, and there was no stopping it now. The air felt heavier as they moved closer to the alien satellite hub. The ruins of Earth surrounded them, a silent reminder of the devastation the invaders had caused. The sky was no longer the bright blue it once was. Instead, it was a muted gray, filled with the remnants of fire and smoke from the countless destroyed cities. The sun barely managed to pierce through the thick clouds, casting the world in a dim, foreboding light. Each step they took felt like a reminder of how much had been lost, and how much was still at stake. Sophia and her group had been on the move for hours, their feet carrying them across the broken landscape, through what used to be thriving cities and forests, now reduced to dust and rubble. They had encountered more survivors along the way, some banding together to form makeshift resistance groups, others simply struggling to survive. The alien invaders had thought they could break Earth's spirit, but they hadn't counted on humanity's unyielding will to fight back. As they approached the perimeter of the satellite hub, Sophia's heart pounded in her chest. They were close, Too close. Her hands gripped her rifle tightly, knuckles white with the pressure. She could feel the weight of the mission pressing down on her, the responsibility for the lives of those around her, and the future of Earth itself. The satellite hub was massive, a towering structure of alien design. It loomed over the landscape like a monument to their invaders' power. Its surface shimmered with a strange, unnatural glow, pulsing with energy, as though it were alive. The air around it hummed with a low, vibrating frequency, a constant reminder that the alien technology within was far beyond anything humanity had ever seen. The defense systems surrounding it were nearly impenetrable. Drones patrolled the skies, and automated turrets were stationed at key points, ready to strike at anything that came too close. Sophia's mind raced. They needed to get inside. The satellite hub controlled the invaders' weapons network, and if they could disable it, they would have a chance to strike at the heart of the fleet. But the defense system was formidable. Getting through it would take everything they had. There was no room for error. Jason, the engineer, stepped forward, his face grim but determined. "We can't take it head-on. Not with their drones and turrets. But I've been working on something. We might have a way in, but it's going to take timing and precision. We need to disable the security grid around the entrance. Once that's down, we can make our move." Sophia nodded, her eyes scanning the area for any sign of movement. The tension in the air was palpable. They were so close, but the alien presence was overwhelming. Every corner of the compound was under heavy surveillance, and the odds seemed impossible. "How long do we have before the security grid resets?" she asked. Jason glanced at his device, where a holographic map of the area flickered to life. "About 5 minutes. We'll have to move fast. Once the grid goes down, we'll have a brief window to slip inside. After that, the entire facility will be on alert." Sophia took a deep breath, her mind focused. There was no turning back now. The fate of humanity rested on their ability to pull this off. If they failed, the aliens would have even more control over Earth, and the possibility of resistance would dwindle to nothing. "All right. Everyone knows their roles," she said, her voice firm. "We take this facility, disable the satellite network, and get out. We do this together, or we don't do it at all." The group nodded, checking their gear one last time before positioning themselves. They were ready. The first part of the plan was to create a diversion, a loud enough distraction to draw the alien drones and turrets away from the entrance. It wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't be pretty, but it was their only chance. Sophia and Jason moved to their designated spot, a ruined building not far from the main entrance. It offered them some cover, though not much. The noise from the drones was growing louder as they approached the facility, the mechanical hum of their engines making the air vibrate with intensity. The sound made Sophia's skin crawl. She knew that every drone up there had one purpose: to hunt them down. Jason pulled out a small device from his pack and began to set it up on the ground, attaching wires to several nearby power sources. This should overload the power grid and cause a temporary shutdown, he explained in a low voice. "It won't last long, but it should be enough to get us inside." Sophia glanced around once more, making sure they hadn't been spotted. "When you're ready, let's make it count." Jason nodded, giving her a small, reassuring smile. "It'll work. It has to." With everything in place, Jason activated the device, and the quiet hum of energy around them began to pulse more erratically. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, without warning, a massive explosion of light and sound erupted from the power grid, sending a shockwave rippling through the air. The drones overhead immediately changed their course, zooming toward the explosion as the turrets shifted their focus, firing at the new threat. "Now," Sophia shouted. Without hesitation, she and the others sprinted forward, racing toward the entrance to the hub. The ground trembled beneath their feet as the alien defenses went into overdrive, but they had the advantage of surprise. For the moment, the hub was distracted. They had a chance. As they neared the entrance, Sophia's pulse raced. They had to move quickly. The door was heavy, a thick metal barrier designed to keep out intruders. But Jason had already prepared a way in. He had hacked into the facility's security system, and the doors slowly began to slide open. They slipped inside just as the alarms began to blare, the sound echoing through the corridors of the hub. They had only minutes before the alarm triggered a full lockdown. They had to move fast. The interior of the facility was unlike anything they had ever seen. Alien technology covered every surface. Glowing panels and strange symbols filled the walls, and large machinery hummed with an eerie energy. It was both beautiful and terrifying, a testament to the invaders' technological prowess. But Sophia had no time to admire the alien design. They had a mission to complete. "Jason, the network," she said, her voice sharp with urgency. Jason was already working, his fingers flying across a portable terminal. "I'm in. The satellite grid is controlled from the central hub. It's just up ahead." Sophia nodded, motioning for the group to follow. Every step they took brought them closer to the heart of the enemy's power. They moved quickly, but every corner, every hallway, was a potential trap. The hum of the facility seemed to grow louder as they neared the central control room, and Sophia's nerves were on edge. Then, as they rounded the final corner, they saw it, the control room door, massive and imposing, standing between them and the satellite network they needed to disable. The last obstacle. Sophia took a deep breath. "This is it. We go in together, and we finish this." With one last glance at her team, she pushed open the door. Inside, the control room was filled with rows of alien consoles, glowing with a pulsating light. The atmosphere was charged, as though the very air crackled with energy. But they were not alone. As the door to the control room slid open, Sophia's heart skipped a beat. The space inside was vast, far larger than she had anticipated. Rows upon rows of alien consoles lined the walls, all glowing with an eerie, pulsating light. At the center of the room was a massive, cylindrical structure, its surface covered with strange symbols and running data streams. It hummed with power, a silent heartbeat of the invaders' network. The room was silent, save for the hum of the alien technology. But something felt off. Sophia stepped into the room, her hand instinctively reaching for the grip of her rifle. The others followed closely behind her, the air thick with tension. Jason was already moving toward the nearest terminal, his fingers flying over the alien controls in an attempt to access the central system. His eyes flicked back to Sophia, his face filled with focus. "I'm in," he whispered, his voice tight. "This is it. If I can disable the satellite grid, we'll have the upper hand. But I need time. It won't be quick." Sophia nodded, her breath steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "You have 5 minutes tops. After that, they'll lock down this entire facility, and we'll be trapped." As Jason worked, Sophia scanned the room. The walls were lined with alien technology, so intricate and advanced that it made Earth's best tech look like child's play. The monitors flickered with cryptic data, symbols that she couldn't even begin to understand. But the one thing she did recognize were the large windows at the far end of the room. Beyond them, she could see the looming shape of the alien ships, their black, metallic bodies filling the sky outside. The fleet. It was right there, hovering just above the ground, waiting for the signal to strike. Sophia's grip tightened on her rifle. If they failed here, if Jason couldn't disable the satellite network in time, the fleet would wipe out every last resistance on Earth. Humanity wouldn't stand a chance. Then, a sound broke through the tension. A faint, metallic clicking noise. It was too subtle at first, but then it grew louder. Footsteps. Someone was coming. Sophia's eyes shot toward the door they had just come through. Her pulse quickened. They hadn't triggered any alarms. How had anyone found them? She motioned for the group to fall into position, taking cover behind the consoles, her eyes scanning the doorway. The footsteps grew louder, closer. A cold dread settled in her stomach. It wasn't just one person. It was more. They had been discovered. "Jason," she hissed, barely audible. Hurry. Jason's fingers moved faster, but the alien system seemed to be resisting. He was close, but he needed more time. They couldn't afford to wait any longer. The footsteps were now joined by a low mechanical whirring sound, like some kind of drone. The first figure appeared in the doorway, tall and cloaked in armor. It was an alien soldier, their sleek black armor reflecting the dim light in the room. A helmet obscured their face, but the stance, the posture, was unmistakable. The invaders were here. The soldier didn't even pause to survey the room. They moved swiftly, alert, as if they already knew exactly where the group was hiding. "Stay low," Sophia whispered urgently to her team. The alien soldier stepped further into the room, followed by two more, their weapons raised, scanning for threats. They were highly trained, tactical, and deadly. Sophia's pulse was pounding in her ears, but she forced herself to remain calm. The situation had just become far more dangerous. Jason was still working, but his eyes flicked nervously toward the approaching soldiers. "I need 2 more minutes," he muttered, not looking up from the console. His voice was strained, but there was no time to argue. Sophia swallowed her fear. There was no way they could take on 3 alien soldiers with just their small group. The invaders had the upper hand in every way. They were better equipped, better trained, and their technology was far superior. But they had something the aliens didn't: desperation, courage, and a will to fight for everything they had left. "On my mark," she whispered to the others, her voice tight with control. "Wait until they get close, then we strike." The soldiers continued their sweep of the room, their movements synchronized, scanning every corner with terrifying efficiency. As they drew closer to Sophia's group, she took a deep breath, focusing every muscle on keeping calm, on waiting for the right moment. The others were waiting too, their hands steady on their weapons, faces etched with determination. Then the moment came. The soldiers were within striking distance. Sophia signaled with a sharp hand gesture. Now, in a single fluid motion, the group sprang into action. Sophia fired first, her shot ringing out across the room, hitting one of the soldiers square in the chest. The impact sent the soldier crashing backward, its armor crumpling under the force. But the shot was only a warning. The others quickly raised their weapons, firing back. The room exploded into chaos. Sophia ducked behind a console as the alien soldiers returned fire, their energy blasts streaking across the room in bright, deadly arcs. She could hear the hum of their weapons, a sound that was both alien and terrifying. Her heart raced as she pressed herself low, using the console for cover. She popped up for another shot, hitting one of the soldiers in the arm, but the armor absorbed the blast. "Jason!" She yelled again, hoping he could hear her over the gunfire. "How much longer?" "I'm almost there," Jason called out, his voice strained. "Just a few more seconds." Sophia knew they couldn't keep this up for much longer. The soldiers were moving in, trying to corner them. The sound of their boots clanging against the metal floor echoed louder as they advanced. A blast hit the console next to her, and the shockwave sent her flying backward. She slammed into the floor, her vision blurry for a moment. Her ears rang, but she forced herself to focus. She needed to get back up. They couldn't let this fight be over. With a grunt, she pushed herself to her feet, firing another round at the advancing soldiers. The alien soldier she had shot earlier was getting back up, and Sophia's pulse quickened. She had to stop them now. Just as the soldier raised its weapon to fire, a loud crackle filled the room, followed by a strange, buzzing sound. Jason's voice rang out, sharp and triumphant. "I did it. The satellite network is down. The fleet's systems are offline." Sophia couldn't believe her ears. It had worked. The signal was gone. The fleet was vulnerable. Without wasting a second, she fired one more shot, hitting the last soldier in the chest. The alien crumpled to the ground, its weapon falling from its hands. The room fell silent. Sophia turned to Jason, who was panting but grinning. "We did it. We've got a chance." For the first time in what felt like an eternity, a wave of relief washed over Sophia. They had done it. The alien satellite network was down. The invaders were vulnerable. But this victory wasn't without cost. The alien soldiers weren't the only threat. They had to get out of here. Quickly. And the fight was far from over. You said. The moment the satellite network collapsed, the entire battlefield shifted. The alien fleet, once an unstoppable presence in the sky, now hung in disarray. Without their central command relays, their ships could no longer coordinate their attacks with the same ruthless efficiency. Earth's defenders, outnumbered, outgunned, but never outmatched in spirit, finally had an opening. Sophia didn't have time to celebrate. The alien control center was compromised, and the enemy would soon realize what had happened. They had minutes, maybe less, before reinforcements swarmed the facility. Everyone move. Now, she barked, pushing Jason away from the console. The rest of the team fell in behind her, weaving through the wreckage of fallen alien soldiers as they sprinted for the exit. The corridors pulsed with emergency lights, an eerie glow casting their shadows along the walls. A distant siren howled through the base, a sound Sophia had never heard before, but instinctively understood. They weren't just detected. The entire base was going on lockdown. A metallic clang echoed through the halls, followed by a deep, guttural voice barking something in an alien tongue. Heavy boots pounded against the metal floors, getting closer. They're coming, Jason gasped. Sophia knew there was no outrunning them. Not in these tight corridors. They needed an edge. Up ahead. She called out, spotting an intersection. We split up. Regroup at the hangar. It was a gamble. If they stayed together, they would be cornered. If they split, at least some of them had a chance of making it out. Jason hesitated, but Sophia shoved him forward. Go. Now. The team scattered, each member disappearing down a different path. Sophia took the leftmost corridor, her rifle gripped tight. Her boots barely made a sound against the floor as she sprinted forward, her heartbeat hammering in her ears. The hallway twisted and turned, leading her deeper into the facility. Every corner she turned felt like it could be an ambush, but she had no choice. She had to keep moving. Then she saw it, a doorway leading into what looked like a storage room. She ducked inside, pressing herself against the wall, her breath coming in short gasps. Footsteps thundered past the door. She stayed still, her finger hovering over the trigger. A moment passed, then another. The footsteps faded. She exhaled slowly. It wasn't over yet, but she had a few precious seconds to think. The plan was to regroup at the hangar. If the alien fleet was down, they could steal a ship and get back to Earth's forces with vital intel. But that was only if they all made it. Sophia peeked out from the doorway, scanning for movement. Coast clear. She stepped out and pressed on. The hangar was still a few levels away. She needed to find an elevator, or better yet, an emergency shaft. She was halfway down the next corridor when a deafening explosion rocked the facility. Sophia was thrown to the ground as the walls trembled. Sparks rained from the ceiling. The lights flickered wildly. She scrambled to her feet, disoriented. Smoke filled the hallway. Something had just gone terribly wrong. Her comm crackled. Sophia. It was Jason, his voice laced with panic. We have a problem. No kidding. What happened? She demanded. They blew the hangar bay doors. We can't get out. Sophia's stomach twisted. No way. If the hangar doors were destroyed, their only exit was gone. There had to be another way. Tell me there's another ship, she said, already sprinting toward the nearest stairwell. There is, but... Jason hesitated. It's theirs. Sophia's breath caught. A captured alien ship. It was a long shot, but it was all they had. I don't care, she snapped. Prep it for launch. She reached the stairwell and practically leaped down the steps, 2 at a time. The facility shook again as another explosion erupted somewhere below. They were running out of time. Bursting through the final door, she found herself in the lower hangar bay. Smoke and fire painted the scene in shades of chaos. Alien bodies were scattered across the floor, some crushed under fallen debris. Jason and the others were already at the ship, a sleek obsidian black craft with a streamlined design. The ramp was down, and Jason was frantically working at the control panel. "Hurry," he yelled. Sophia didn't need to be told twice. She sprinted across the hangar, gunfire rattling behind her as more alien soldiers stormed in. A blast seared past her, so close she felt the heat on her cheek. She hit the ramp at full speed, diving inside just as Jason slammed the panel. The hatch sealed shut. "Tell me you can fly this thing," she gasped. Jason's hands flew over the console, the alien symbols flashing under his fingertips. "I have no idea," he admitted. The ship rumbled to life beneath them. Sophia didn't look back. She didn't need to. The aliens were closing in. "Then learn fast," she said, "because we're getting out of here." The alien ship trembled as Jason fought to bring it under control. The interface was unlike anything he had ever seen before. Strange symbols, glowing lines of energy running through the console, and an eerie hum that seemed to resonate in his bones. It was almost alive. Sophia gripped the back of his seat, her pulse hammering in her ears. "Can you fly it or not?" Jason exhaled sharply, fingers flying over the controls. "I can try, but don't expect it to be smooth." Outside, alarms blared through the hangar as more alien soldiers stormed in. Their weapons glowed, charging up deadly energy rounds. The ship was still on the ground, an easy target. If Jason didn't get them airborne now, they wouldn't get another chance. Sophia spun around, raising her rifle. "How long do you need?" "Maybe 30 seconds. "We don't have 30 seconds. The first blast hit the side of the ship, shaking the entire cabin. Sparks rained down from the ceiling. The second shot narrowly missed, scorching the hull. The aliens were closing in fast, their armored boots pounding against the metal floor. Sophia didn't hesitate. She braced herself against the hatch and fired, taking down the nearest soldier. Another one rushed forward. She dropped him with a clean shot to the chest. But there were too many. They kept coming, relentless. A deep, grinding sound rumbled through the ship. The floor beneath them vibrated as the engines roared to life. The ship lurched upward, its anti-gravity systems kicking in. Jason's voice was strained. "We're moving." The sudden ascent threw Sophia off balance. She stumbled, catching herself against the wall. Below, the alien soldiers scrambled, some diving for cover as the ship's thrusters blasted the hangar with intense heat. "Brace yourself," Jason yelled. The ship shot forward. Sophia barely had time to grab onto the nearest console before they were launched out of the hangar, breaking through the smoke-filled atmosphere. The gravity pressed down on her, her breath hitching in her throat as the ship rocketed toward the sky. Behind them, the alien facility erupted in chaos. Explosions tore through the structure, sending fire and debris spiraling into the air. The enemy had realized what was happening, but it was too late. They were free. For a moment, there was silence. Just the low hum of the ship, the faint flickering of damaged systems, and the sound of their own heavy breathing. Then Sophia exhaled, pressing a hand to her forehead. That was insane. Jason let out a breathless laugh, his hand still gripping the controls. "Yeah, and we're not done yet." She followed his gaze to the viewport. The alien fleet was still there, massive warships hovering in the dark, their glowing red lights scanning for threats. But something was different. Their movements were erratic. Jason smirked. "They're blind without their network." Sophia narrowed her eyes. "Then let's make them pay for what they did." Jason hesitated. "We should get back to Earth." Sophia turned to face him, her voice steady. "No, we have their ship. We have their codes. We have a chance to strike before they regain control." Jason looked at her, then at the fleet ahead. A moment of silence. Then he nodded. "Let's do this. The ship surged forward, straight toward the heart of the enemy fleet. You said. The alien ship hurtled toward the heart of the enemy fleet, its sleek, black hull barely registering on the scattered enemy sensors. Without their command network, the massive warships drifted in confusion, their coordinated movements now sluggish, their formations unraveling. It was the first time Sophia had ever seen them look vulnerable. Jason gripped the controls, his knuckles white. If we're doing this, we need a plan. Sophia didn't hesitate. We hit their command ship. Hard. Take out their leadership before they recover. If we can deal a critical blow now, Earth stands a chance. Jason exhaled. You're insane. But I'm right, Sophia shot back. Jason glanced at her, then smirked. Yeah, you usually are. The alien controls still felt strange under his fingers, but he was getting the hang of them. The ship responded to his touch like it was alive, shifting smoothly through the darkness of space. He brought them closer, weaving through the debris of the earlier battle. The enemy fleet loomed ahead, hulking behemoths of metal, armed with enough firepower to turn a planet into dust. But right now, they were blind, confused, scrambling to recover from the blow Sophia's team had already dealt them. And they were about to take another. Sophia moved to the weapons console. The alien symbols were unreadable, but the layout was intuitive. She pressed a glowing panel, and the screen flickered to life, displaying the ship's arsenal. Her heart pounded. This ship wasn't just a transport. It was a war machine. Well? Jason asked. Sophia's lips curled into a dangerous grin. We're armed. Jason's fingers tightened on the controls. Then let's make history. With a flick of his wrist, he sent the ship into a sharp dive, skimming just beneath the belly of one of the enemy dreadnoughts. Red warning lights flickered along the warship's hull as its systems tried to track them. Too slow. Sophia fired. A beam of crackling energy erupted from their stolen ship, cutting across the dreadnought's engines. The effect was immediate. A chain reaction of explosions tore through the massive structure, fire and debris blooming into the void. The ship groaned, metal twisting, before it split apart in a violent detonation. Jason whooped. One down. But they had no time to celebrate. The destruction had drawn attention. Enemy ships adjusted their positions, weapons locking onto their location. The comms crackled with alien voices, panicked, disorganized, but still dangerous. Sophia's jaw clenched. We need to move. Now. Jason pushed the ship into a steep climb, dodging a barrage of plasma fire. Bright streaks of light shot past them, some too close for comfort. The ship shook violently as an explosion rocked their left wing. That was close, Jason shouted. Sophia ignored the damage warnings flashing across her screen. We need to reach the command ship before they regroup. Through the chaos of battle, she spotted it, the enemy flagship, a towering vessel larger than any they had encountered before. Its surface was covered in intricate alien markings, glowing faintly with pulsing blue energy. It was the brain of the fleet. Destroying it would cripple them completely. Jason grimaced. That thing's a fortress. Sophia's eyes burned with determination. Then we break the gates. She targeted the ship's primary weapons array and fired. The beam cut through its outer defenses, explosions bursting along its surface. Secondary turrets rotated, trying to lock onto them, but Jason twisted the controls, sending them into a barrel roll. Another blast from Sophia's console, a direct hit. The command ship shuddered. Fires erupted across its hull. Warning sirens blared. The once imposing warship now looked vulnerable. Sophia turned to Jason, hit the core. Jason hesitated only for a second. Then he slammed his hand onto the console, launching their final attack. A missile shot forward, cutting through the chaos of battle. The command ship's defenses scrambled, but it was too late. The warhead struck dead center. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a brilliant explosion ripped through the enemy flagship, tearing it apart from within. The shockwave blasted through space, sending debris and wreckage flying in every direction. The rest of the fleet faltered, their formation collapsing entirely. Without leadership, without coordination, they were finished. Sophia let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Jason laughed, breathless. "We did it." Sophia stared at the remains of the enemy fleet, now in complete disarray. "No," she corrected. "Humanity did it. Their stolen ship drifted through the wreckage, the battle over. Earth had survived. But this was just the beginning.